Is it on? I'm going to announce your Umrah trip, by the way. Akhi. Sweet day. MashaAllah. Allah accept it. Are you ready? Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya'i wal mursaleen. Nabina Muhammadin alayhi afdalu salati wa tamu taslim. If the brothers at the back can settle down, please. We only have 30 more minutes of benefit from our Sheikh Mufti because he has a lecture in another masjid across the city. So we want to leave here for 7:45, inshallah. So inshallah we can start the Q&A. Dave, who has questions? Fadala.
Question says, are seizures due to a lack of sleep and or due to jinn possession? A general principle in a brief period of time that we have is that specialists deserve most to speak on their specific field. So I'm not a medical doctor, nor have I formally studied medicine. Do I have an idea that I read? Do I know people that are doctors and nurses, etc., in which I can give you some benefit about that? But I'm not a doctor. So the best thing to do to ask about someone who has seizures from lack of sleep is an actual doctor. But what we do know for sure is that any imbalance and the natural way of Allah's creation leads to other problems and consequences. Any imbalance. Lack of sleep, too much sleep, lack of food, too much food. A person isn't married, they cannot fulfill their desires in a permissible way, that leads to harm in the body. Too much of it leads to harm in the body, etc. So everyone is different, everybody is different. If a person doesn't sleep properly, it could lead to a seizure. And another person who doesn't sleep properly, it may not necessarily lead to a seizure. As far as jinn possession, the ulama of Islam, they say that as of two types, and what we call epilepsy. Sometimes due to medical deficiency in the body, a sickness and an illness, and other times it is due to jinn possession. So it depends on the situation. So obviously if a person is possessed with a jinn or multiple jinn or sihr, it isn't just an isolated issue. There's going to be a list of symptoms that a person can know and realize that it isn't something natural, but it's actual something supernatural. Whether it be your dreams, nightmares, and the list goes on. So it depends on the person. And Allah knows best.
Jazakallah khair. Fadala, Abu Rafi.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. On studies. The best way is balance. If you have a dawah group that wishes to focus on scholarship more than dawah until they've reached a general acceptable standard, and then give dawah, and another group says no, the opposite. We need more dawah, we need more activity, and scholarship isn't necessarily needed. We don't need Ibn Taymiyyah on the streets to give dawah. Balance. قُلْ هَذِهِ سَبِيلِي أَدْعُو إِلَى اللَّهِ عَلَى بَصِيرَةٍ. You have to call to Allah with knowledge, with hikmah, with wisdom. And at the same time, that person who says that you don't need Ibn Taymiyyah walking down the street giving dawah to non-Muslims, to Muslims drinking and smoking and not wearing hijab, they're also right. But shaitan does not care how you go to the fire of hell. He doesn't care which side of extremism you're on. You're not giving dawah because learning. He doesn't care as long as you're not giving dawah. Nor does he care if you give dawah and you have ignorance and you make a mistake and you speak about Allah without the proper knowledge. He does not care. He only calls. The only reason that he wants you and calls you is to be in the fire of hell with him. So the shaitan cares not what you call yourself. The shaitan cares not about your mistake or your error as long as it is bringing you to the fire. So balance. There's no dawah without knowledge. And what's the purpose of knowledge without dawah? And Allah knows best. Tafadhal akhi.
Sometimes should we go out to the gym section with the music with the free mixing? What do we do in the situation?
What do you do in a situation when you go to the gym and there's music and there's free mixing? Don't go to the gym. It's just that simple. If there's a problem in music, a problem in free mixing, and other issues as well, don't go. There's nothing wrong with physical activity in Islam. Allah Azza wa Jalla, He loves the strong believer, spiritually strong, first and foremost, mentally strong, secondly, and also physically strong for the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's nothing wrong with working out, running, being in shape, avoiding obesity, avoiding sicknesses and illness. That's all from Islam. But there are other alternatives. If you have to sacrifice a bit of comfort or sacrifice some modern machines and technology and just suffice yourselves with a few basic things, and instead of listening to music and looking at women and men and homosexuals, etc., then that is what you should do. And at the same time, the Muslims, they should strive and they should work hard to make a halal gym in which there isn't free mixing, there isn't the music, there isn't the impermissible things, the glorifying of one's body and wearing tight clothes. And you don't need a million things, a treadmill, a bench press, a few things here, a few things there, and there are natural ways of staying in shape. And the last piece of advice is there's nothing wrong with being physically strong. There's nothing wrong with that. I want strong brothers around me. There's no doubt about that. I don't want weak brothers around me. There's nothing wrong with it. However, the concept of bodybuilding and taking steroids and eating this and drinking this and looking like this and wearing this tight, that's problematic, and that is a culture. The gym is much more than just physical exercise. It's a culture, and it has a deeply rooted history. Read the history of modern civilization and where athleticism and marathons and Olympics, where it comes from. And as a Muslim, you will be utterly disgusted. So you take it, of course, with a balance. A balance. Being strong, being fit. You can't walk up the steps without passing out and panting. That's not a good thing. But it doesn't mean that you have to spend hours and hours and hours taking pills, taking steroids, and trying to look like someone and wearing tight clothes and being cocky and arrogant. Because that is the culture of bodybuilding and in the gym on that level of extreme. On that level of extreme. And Allah knows best. Assalamu alaikum. May Allah preserve you. Ameen. Could you answer my question I said to you before the Iqamah started? The question to do with my brother-in-law. If what I remember correctly, you're going to be stuck between a rock and a hard place. If you travel with this family member abroad, overseas, you're going to be with non-mahram men, and you're going to leave another family member in your hometown. If you stay with this family member in your hometown, brother-in-law, there's other non-mahrams, etc. What do you do? If you're forced to take a position, either you travel or you stay here, then you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. Either of the two, there's going to be a mafsada. And the ulama of Islam, they say that you take a khaf'a, ad-dararain, the lesser of the two harms. So what's better for you? What's safer for you? What's closer to your honor and your integrity? Go with your father or stay with your mother? Who needs your service more? You have to make that decision. I cannot give you the answer to that question. It depends on what you know of the situation and what you have in your heart of that which is aqrabu al-taqwa, that which is closer to the piety. So Allah Azza wa Jalla knows best. If you want my personal advice, then I will have to give more details. I will have to give more details to give you a personal opinion. And Allah Azza wa Jalla is the one who guides.
Sheikh,
would you recommend doing a nikah and moving in with a spouse at a later date? Anonymous. It depends on the situation. One of the most important principles of the Sharia is flexibility. The Sharia is flexible, it's elastic, it's never rigid, it's never stuck. Sometimes do this, other times do that, as long as the conditions and the pillars are not violated. As long as the shurut are there, the arkan are there, and the mawani', the inhibitors aren't there. So to get married, there are shurut, prerequisites. To get married, there has to be arkan, pillars. And to get married, there cannot be mawani', things which will prohibit a man and a woman joining in marriage. As long as they are there, and as long as those aren't there, in person, on the phone, overseas, different race, younger, older, married, virgin, children, etc. The Sharia is flexible, and it depends on the person, and it depends on the situation. So there may be a time when you get married and it's inappropriate to move in. There may be a time you get married and your wife lives in another country. There may be a time in which you get married and the woman has a house, etc. There is no one rule to these issues. The Sharia is flexible, and that which is flexible, it is universal. It is suitable for different times, different places, different ages, different races, different classes of people. That which is rigid and solid and stiff, eventually when a strong enough wind comes, it will snap. And that is not the way of the Sharia. So it all depends on what's best. The Sunnah, the orthodox conventional method, get married, do the walima, consummate the marriage, be with each other. That's the conventional way. But conventional way is not always that which is feasible. And Allah Azza wa Jalla surely knows best. Barakallahu fikum.
If a person is a traveler and they go to, for example, they join with Jama'ah, for example, Salat al-Dhuhr, and the traveler is meant to pray the 2 rak'ahs. Like if they were to catch the Imam
And the last 2 rak'ah.
or the last rak'ah, do they pray 2 or do they carry on?
Clear. The question says a person is traveling. And obviously, if it's a prayer that has 4 units, they are supposed to, whether it's obligatory or recommended, to make 2 units. So you go to the Jama'ah and the Imam is a resident. You come in on the 3rd rak'ah, meaning that you missed the 1st and the 2nd. Do you just make 2 rak'ah when the Imam gives the salam, or do you make 2 additional rak'ah? The safest thing to do is to make 2 additional rak'ah. That's the safest thing to do. And that is because you joint the prayer with the intention of following an Imam who is a resident. You joint the prayer with the intention of following a muqim, and the muqim makes 4 and not 2. So that's the safest thing to do. It doesn't necessarily mean that that's the strongest view or the only view. Some may say is that since you missed 2 rak'ah, you're only to make 2 rak'ah. That which is upon you is to make 2 rak'ah, and you caught 2 rak'ah, and you made a final tashahhud. But that's not the safest thing to do. Avoid the khilaf and make the additional 2 rak'ah. And Allah knows best.
You talked about self-criticism and looking past or within yourself. How can one improve from that and take bad characteristics and turn into something positive? Unique bad characteristics.
About self-criticism, you said?
Yeah.
Right. Self-criticism is a necessity. And self-criticism is the mark of the master. The mark of the master is never to be complacent and never to get laid back. He scores 50 points and he says, I have to practice harder, I have to work harder, I have to do better. He's always looking for perfection, striving for perfection. And the moment you become complacent is when the shaitan creeps up on you. And pride can creep up on you. And conceit can creep up on you. And if not, at best, you just won't strive for perfection. Inna Allah kataba al-ihsana ala kulli shay. Allah has prescribed perfection upon all things. Anything that you do in life, you should seek to perfect that thing. And one of the easiest and fastest ways of getting to that level of perfection is self-criticism before someone else criticizes you. Because someone else may criticize you and you may not be able to handle it. You may not listen to it because it's coming in a negative way. You may not listen to that criticism because it's someone who's lesser than you. But obviously, if you're criticizing yourself, then the door to accepting that criticism is what? In most cases, it's easier. So self-criticism is very important. And just sit down and ponder. I gave a class. The people were pleased with the class, but I know I made a mistake. Or I know I had another ayah that I wanted to mention. Or I could have given more time. Or I could have said it in a simpler way. Sit down and evaluate it. Talk with people that are in your inner circle and ask them to be honest with you. Tell me the truth. How did I do? Don't butter me up. Did I do well? And it says you did good, but I think you should have said this. Or you stuttered. Or you were looking at the paper too much. Or you're too nervous. Or you're too stiff. You can't do this unless you have good, honest people around you. But nothing will suffice with self-criticism. And the worse you are on yourself, the better you'll be at your profession. And Allah Azza wa Jalla, self-criticism is a major manifestation of humility. And it's a major insurance plan against ghurur wal-ujb, conceit and thinking that you're something, thinking that you got it. So yeah, self-criticism is extremely important to the student of knowledge. It's extremely important. And Allah knows best. That's in brief.
Sheikh, the question says, is the son of my father's wife from a previous marriage my mahram?
Repeat the question. Is the son of
my father's wife?
Of my father's wife.
From a previous
Please tell us
marriage.
to email this question, because me personally, I have a problem when it comes to son, previous, this and that. And I need to see it laid out to actually understand the bloodline and the relationship. Stepson, stepdaughter, etc. That's the best thing to do with regards to this question. Inshallah. Let me see the question. It says here, the son of my father's wife. That's going to be your what? Your stepmother.
Yeah, your stepbrother.
Tayyib. Email a question, inshallah. Let us ponder over it, please. Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
I travel often outside of my town, and during the Easter, the time for Salah close to each other. Because I travel every day to work, do I still have the concession of talking and drinking?
Question says, I travel outside. The times are often very short and very close together. And do I still have the concession, the rukhsa, to combine the salah? The ulama of Islam, they say it is permissible to combine the salah as long as you are a traveler. No matter if you do it every day, even if you do it in the month of Ramadan. And Allah knows best.
Sheikh, Barakallah Fikum, the question says, what's the ruling regarding the one who is a Muslim, however their family is not a Muslim, and they leave for them their wealth in their inheritance after they pass away?
Tayyib, a non-Muslim and a Muslim sharing inheritance. I think that we have to make a difference between inheritance and a will or an estate. The ulama of Islam in general, they say that there are similarities and parallels between the two, and there are differences between the two. Irth is one thing. Al-wasiyah is another thing. You can leave in your will money and wealth to someone who originally isn't an heir. Someone who isn't necessarily a blood relative. And a specific amount, a third, and some of the ulama say even more than a third, bi-idhnil waratha, as long as it's with the permission of the heirs. So if your non-Muslim parents leave you money, or a relative, and they leave you money in a will and an estate, it's not necessarily the same as actual irth shar'i, the legitimate legislative rules of inheritance, in which the wealth is left behind and it is split up and divided. So, for hypothetical reasons, let's say you have a mother or a father and they're very wealthy, and you know that they're wealthy. You have a good relationship with them. And your mother says, son, when I go, I want you to have this house. When I go, I want you to have these cars. I want you to have this business. And you know that the Prophet ﷺ forbade this. A Muslim is not to inherit a kafir is not to inherit from a Muslim. And you told them, put it in a will, write it down, and make it a legal statement, which is not actual inheritance. Perhaps, لَعَلَّ هَذَا مَخْرَجْ مِنَ الْمَخَارِجِ. Maybe that's a way out of this problem. However, there's a difference between secular and nominal living, and with regards to the actual legislative way of wealth being dispersed and disseminated. Sometimes there are parallels, and sometimes there are things which are inconsistent. Everyone understand this? That's the best advice I would give, and Allah knows best.
Barakallah Fikum.
Fadal.
The questioner asks, is there any specific hadith for a woman being out after Maghrib, and is it prohibited?
Is there any specific hadith for a woman being out after Maghrib and isn't prohibited? The authentic hadith teach us that it's permissible for a woman to leave her house, to come to the masjid, or to do whatever she needs to do, as long as it's done with respectable conditions. Respectable conditions. Whether it is to the masjid or any other place. From those conditions is that it's with the idhn, the permission of her husband or her guardian. From those conditions that she's wearing the proper attire. From those conditions that she does not perfume herself. Rather, the hadith says that شهدت إحداكن العشاء الآخرة أو إذا شهدت معنا إحداكن العشاء الآخرة فلا تمس طيبا. When one of you comes to the masjid for Isha prayer, do not put on perfume. So the hadith clearly affirms a woman coming to the masjid after dark, as long as she isn't wearing perfume. As far as a woman cannot leave her house after Maghrib, it's haram to be outside at night. I don't know where this comes from. An authentic or weak hadith I haven't come across. What's important is the conditions and safety. You may live in a place in which is dangerous in the daytime. And you may live in a place in which is safe at night. Allah knows best. Wafikum. Ameen.
Ameen.
The question is it permissible to take knowledge that is not aqidah from Ahl al-Qibla? For example, learning luqat
Clear.
or hadith.
Crystal clear. Tayyip, before we go forward, with regards to this question, or any other question that doesn't get answered, or question needs further detail, and a person has to mention specific details, or you want to keep it private, then make sure that you email us, inshallah ta'ala, at the website. If your question does not get answered tonight, or you have a personal issue, or you need to give further details to help us conceptualize the question, please email us at muftihadith@gmail.com. As far as the question of our brother, may Allah bless him, is it permissible to learn other than Aqidah from Ahlul Qibla? From Ahlul Qibla, and perhaps he means Yani Ahlul Bid'ah or Ahlul Mukhalafat, the people who have innovations, the people who make mistakes. Okay? Jazakallah khairan for the important question. And the advice of my job is to first give you instruction is that you have to empty your cup. You have to do what? Empty the cup. You have to get rid of pre-assumptions, things that you previously heard or you think. Unlearn what you've previously learned. Is it permissible to take knowledge from Ahl al-Qibla? Aqidah, fiqh, lugha, because at the end of the day, even though there's a difference in Aqidah and Hadith and fiqh, it's still learning and studying. And it's natural for your heart to be inclined towards your teacher. Whether he's teaching you Aqidah, is Allah above the throne or not? Or whether he's teaching you Mas'al al-Khuffain. Period. So is it permissible to take knowledge from someone who is an innovator? Or someone who's upon innovation? Or at least someone who has mistakes and errors and they're not the best teacher? Is it permissible? That's clear. The answer is, in brief, is that it depends on what the knowledge is, how necessary and mandatory the knowledge is. It depends on the knowledge seeker. What do you know previously? Are you weak-minded? Are you naive? Are you gullible? Is there a badal shar'i? Is there a substitute, someone else that's better than him, or at least equal to him, that doesn't have these problems, Ahlul Qibla, these issues? It depends. Where are you and what is the knowledge that you're seeking? So you may learn Aqidah with someone who's Ahlul Qibla, quote unquote, and you've learned Aqidah thoroughly. But you may learn from this person to refute someone else. Or you may learn Aqidah with this person because you need to know other dimensions of Aqidah, etc. Or in a university. In a university, Shaykh Abdul Muhsin Abba was asked this question several times. And this when I was young, before Allah had opened up my eyes and saved me from many things of misguidance. He says, what's the rule of studying Azhar Sharif? Is it permissible to study Azhar Sharif, etc.? Shaykh Abdul Muhsin Abba, he would say, yes, it's permissible. The virtue of getting a degree and the importance of having a degree and going back to mu'assasat ilmiya, knowledge-based institutions and working professionally. And he says, when they ask you the question about Allah's sifat, or qadr, or iman, or kasb, or any other mukhalafa, he says, هذا قول أهل السنة وهذا قول الأشاعرة. And you don't have to give your opinion, give the information. So the point is, it depends on who the student is. It depends on what the mistake is. It depends on what the issue is. And it depends on, do you have another resource or not? You're clear on that? At the end of the day, the general rule is that your teacher should be the best person in all aspects, like we learned from Sheikh Bakr, rahimahullah. He should be on the sunnah. He should be knowledgeable. He should be pious. He should be righteous. He should be certified, etc. That's the asl. The asl of a teacher, it should be someone who's trustworthy all around the board. However, the asl isn't always what's in real life. So you may find a teacher who doesn't have good akhlaq. Doesn't mean you can't study with him. You may find a teacher who isn't the most certified. Doesn't mean that you cannot study with him. And you may have a teacher that has bid'ah with him or mistakes with him. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you cannot study with him. But not for everybody. Only certain students, certain types of knowledge, and certain situations. As we have said before, those who say that there is no interaction with Ahlul Bid'ah, that's wrong. And the books of Hadith clearly prove that that's wrong. And those who say that we should have total interaction with Ahlul Bid'ah and sit with them, enjoy with them, and so on, and so on, that's also wrong. And the books of Hadith and the books of the Salaf prove that that's wrong. There is a balance in the middle. The last piece of advice is to be careful and to be cautious of calling people Ahlul Bid'ah. Because oftentimes there isn't actually a bid'ah, let alone bid'ah innovations. Oftentimes there's jealousy and envy. Oftentimes there's a mistake, but the mistake does not necessitate bid'ah. And oftentimes it's ijtihad. You say it's bid'ah, he has his proofs, evidences, his man sabaqahu, those who preceded him in this issue. And just because you differ with him, you say Ahlul Bid'ah. That's dangerous. And that is a poisonous cancer to the dawah of the sunnah and learning and studying. A poisonous cancer that has destroyed many people and will continue to destroy many people. Al-Muhim is that it isn't a black and white issue. Even though there's a default rule, as we just explained. And Allah knows best. Yes, up to you.
All right, we stop here then, inshallah, because he's got a lecture now at Green Lane.
Jazakallah khairan. Barakallah feekum. Allah Azza wa Jal surely knows best. Brothers, if you didn't get your question answered, please email us, inshallah ta'ala. Shukran.
Yeah, in ending, like Mufti said, if anybody's got any questions that weren't answered or need further tafsilat, then email him over to him. In ending, we ask Allah to bless the masjid for hosting this special event, and we ask Allah to bless our Shaykh for the benefit that he's given us, inshallah. Barakallahu feekum.